Hi, good day, everyone. Can you hear me?
Good day. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, that's good. All right, great. All right, so I want to thank you for coming today. Our marking session. This session is being recorded so that we'll have it for future references. So this would be tailored to the new markers. So I have one visiting audience. I'm just gonna focus on you, right? So my name is Rajesh, and I've been with the department for a couple of years now. I've done marketing, I've done tutorials, I've done lectures. And what we realize is all our marketing seems fairly simple. There are a few basic things that we need to make sure you all just follow so that it's smooth and it's easy for everybody to go. Everything is on the slides. There might be some discussion points. Yeah, sure. Oh, right. So everything is on. Right. So I'll just sit down, right? So everything, I mean, you don't have to walk around it. So yeah, just have one person in audience. So let's just get through this and we take it from there. So generally, if you get the batch of scripts from the lecturer, it might be stapled, right? So if it's an envelope, open it, remove the staples, take it out, make sure and check the number of scripts. Like if it's 32, you need to make sure that the number of scripts that is written on the envelope is the same number of scripts that you get. If there's a discrepancy, you need to let the lecturer know one time, right? If the number is not written on the envelope, you need to write the number as well, right? After marking has been complete, double check that the number of scripts is the same. Fairly straightforward, right? If you have to acquire right, so if you have to acquire the assignment from the assignment box, so sometimes a lecturer will give you the key and say, hey, you need to clear the box. Just make sure you clear it at the correct time, as in after the due date. Remove the script and ensure that the box is empty. So depending on how the box is kind of deep. So some scripts may go down to the back of the box. So you need to actually bend down and look and make sure the hole is empty, totally empty, right? So optional. So what I do, like if I know I have to empty the box at 3 o'clock and I can't empty the box because I have a class and it'll take too long, I just go with a colored paper, normal blue ink or blue paper or red, and I just put it at the top and I drop it into the box. So I know any assignments after that will fall above the blue paper. So I know, okay, they're overdue, they're late, right? So that's a little trick. Double check that the number of scripts written on the number of envelopes, you can ask someone to verify. So you get the scripts, you count the scripts. If it's 25 scripts, you write 25, you put what assignment it is on the front of the envelope. Optional, you could sign, you could initial, date the envelope where the number of scripts is written on the envelope, the counting method. So when I count, I know it's real basic stuff we do now, but these things bring about efficiencies. So instead of you have, say, 56 scripts in one batch, I do count them all 50 scripts. I count them batches of 10 and move this one here, batch of 10, and then either put it left, right, next batch of 10, put it vertical, next batch of 10 horizontal. And then when I double check, I make sure I get the same number. If I don't get the same number, then I go through each individual batch so that way I know it's easier where the error is, right? I hold scripts by the staple to ensure you're holding only one script here. So sometimes people check not where the staple is, and they could check loose pages as double scripts, right? Place batches in 10, up, down, left, right, same thing. The last batch will have less than 10 scripts, obviously, double count from the bottom or the start, ready, number on the envelope, date, sign, and everything. So that's there. Anybody has any questions? Again, should right?
No questions so far.
Oh, no question. Okay, good. Placement of marks. So for the page to the left, enter the marks. So this is where we actually get into the marking, right? For the page to the left, enter the marks in the column to the left. For the page to the right, and enter the marks in the column on the right. Hence, only the outer column should be used for marking. So this is your page. You put the marks here. And you put the marks on this side. Do not ever put it on the inside because depending when you open it, you might see the marks. So you might end up adding wrong and getting a wrong total, which doesn't seem like a big thing, but it is a big thing because when you give back to students, and they actually check it correctly, and they have an error and they come to you, and then you have to take more time and you have to go back and change it in the mark sheet. And it could just be long drawn out and unnecessary, right? So you put all your marks here. So you generally put ticks, and then you put your marks to the side and you would circle the marks. So partial marks for a particular question has to be circled and placed in the appropriate column. So for example, if a question has part A, B, and C, you mark part A and you get say 3 or 4 marks, you put 3 and you put it in a circle. Right? When you're finished with a question, right? So don't assume, right? So that's the next thing. Don't assume that a student will present his solution for a question in the order in which they appear. That is, a student may do, say, question 1B, then 1D, and then 1A, etc. Right? So just bear that in mind, but this here doesn't really matter too much. This is the, let's continue with slides. If a student does part of a question more than once without canceling any parts, and they do it correct, you have to mark well and give the highest mark. Choose the highest mark. And add a note for ignoring the low marks, for example, another attempt to mark. So where they have the different attempts, you just put a note, another attempt done, so we would know not to correct that one, or not to look at it. This will avoid double counting. Right, marks to be carried forward. When there's a discontinuity in the student's response to a question, are to be included. So the marks are to be included in a rectangular box with the implication sign to its right, and the question referred that refers to underneath the implication sign. So example, so let's just say they got 9 marks in question 1. So this case is dealing where somebody does question 1A, 1B, and then they do 2A. And then they might do 2B, 2C, and then on the page 4 or 5, they come back to 1C and finish off 1C. So what you need to do is you need to carry the marks that they got for 1A and B on the page where they finish question 1. So how that is done, you add up how many marks it is. If in this case they did 2 parts, so A and B, you add up A and B total. Or you could do it individually, you could do it individually and put the right arrow. So the right arrow means that it's going forward in the script. This is placed in the outer margin where the student pauses the direction. Every written page must have some kind of pen mark on it by the marker. So if you have a script and it has writing on it, but the question is not completed, you want to still put a red mark on the page so that when the student gets it, they'll know that, hey, so looked at this and I didn't get any marks, but he looked at it. It's not like, hey, so you forget to mark this page, so you forget to mark this page. No. So once they see a red mark, they'll know, okay, it was looked at. Right? If a page is left blank, you could cross it out and put the empty sign, the empty Sept, or some indication that it is left blank. If a student makes an error in a question, circle the area on the script that has the error. If a question is correct, you may add a tick or put the word seen. This spelling error, I was trying to get rid of it, is needed. For some reason, Word is not allowing me to edit it. I don't know why. I don't know why. I tried about 6 different times. I deleted the textbook, pasted back, all kind of thing. So just technology, right? If a student has attempted more than one question on the same page, draw a double red line separating the student's question horizontal. Right. So if they have question 1 on the top half of the page and question 1 on the bottom half of the page, actually do a red line that separates it so we know it's a totally different question, right? It helps with tallying up the marks. For a particular question, its final mark, which is the sum of the partial marks that are circled, is to be recorded in the column. Align it to where the student's answer for the final question ends by including it in double parallel lines. So if when you add part A, part B, and part C, and they got 20, you would put 20 and a double line at the bottom and a double line to the top. Right? Thus, whenever this total is recorded, there should be no other part of the student solution for that question that is in the booklet. So the final mark for a question is placed at the end of all parts of the question, independent of the order of the parts. Right? So once you see that double mark, you know, okay, that's the end, that's what it is, good to go. This final mark must also be entered on the front page of the assignment, and you may include the total mark for the assignment. So this just depends on the lecturer, right? Thank you very much. I didn't know we had a mouse. This is good. Right. This final mark must also be entered on the front page of the assignment. You may include the total marks for the assignment also. Again, this is for the lecture, right? Depending on what lecture says. For any questions not attempted by the student, award 0 and circle in the appropriate area. So if the student did not attempt a question, you need to put, let's just say we had question 1, 2, 3, 4, and they left out 5. Put number 5, so question mark, so number 5, and put 0. So we acknowledge that they didn't do 5 and they got 0 for doing 5. Obviously, you do that for any other question. That was left off, right? Some things with marking: BOD, benefit of the doubt; ISW, ignore some subsequent working; FT, follow through; iOS, see no implied; MM, method mark; MR, misread. TOR is rounded or truncated; WWW, without wrong working; SC is special case; OE is equivalent. We generally don't really use these much. The most you'll see is F true, FT, follow through, or BOD, benefit of the doubt. But these are what they are. General items: ask the lecturer for deadlines when to return the manuscripts. Now, this is really important because a lot of students, a lot of markers, they get the scripts and they don't act when the deadline is, and they just sit down and pack up. And then the lecturer thinking, okay, I gave the marker the scripts, they are marking it one time, so in a couple of days I should get it back. So I would suggest always discuss with the lecturer when they need it back for, because the markers will be marking for more than one course. And sometimes, especially around week 5 or week 6, you have coursework exams coming up. So depending, the students, the lecturer might want the students to get back their corrected assignment before the coursework exam. So obviously, if that's a case, you want to push that as a priority, right? If you're unable to return the scripts on time, please inform the lecturer as soon as possible. So if you just can't do it, I know people are studying or whatever reasons may come up. If you really can't do it, you just let them know, hey, I have some stuff going on. It mightn't be possible. What's the solution? And then maybe we might bring in a next mark, or the lecturer might take someone mark, or he might adjust something. We don't know, but basically let us know, right? Let us know what's going on. Be consistent when marking. You should not give one student more marks for making the same error that another student made. Sometimes you may have to go over scripts you already marked to ensure that you are marking consistently and fairly. Pencil mark the first few. So what I do when I get scripts to mark, you will never get a solution that is exactly what everybody has as students. Students will do different things. Some students will come to class, they figure out their stuff. So I would take about 5 scripts and mark all of question 1. See what's going on, mark it in pencil, and by 5 to 10 scripts, you understand what you're going to get, and then I'll switch the pen. So there are a few different methods. You could do question by question. When you're actually marking, you can mark all question 1s and all question 2s, all question 3s, and so on and so forth. Or if you want to go more detailed, depends on how long the question is, you mark all question 1, A, B, and C. 1, A, B, and C, because it might be too much to mark all of A, because when you mark by question, the solution stays in your memory more. So you kind of pick up a speed with it, right? So you know what you're looking for. Okay, tick, and then you flip your paper and you put it down. So you take up, you mark, you flip, you put it for the next question one time, and you go down. Be consistent when marking. You should not give one student more mark when you went through this. Sometimes you may have to go over scripts already marked to ensure that consistency. So this is a very rare case. For me, this would apply a lot for coursework exams and final exam, which is for us. In case if you find that we mark about 10, 15 scripts and the students are not doing how they should perform, and you realize, okay, you can tell maybe mark it scheme out, but you can just adjust it. If you do adjust it, in that case, you need to go back and remark everything, obviously, right? We're all human, we see things differently. We teach something, we don't know how the students take it. Marking options, mark all of a particular, right? So this is what I was saying, mark all of a particular question or part of a question for an assignment, repeat for each question until the end of the assignment. Mark a few, or you can mark 10 full scripts, right? So this is question by question. You can mark full script by full script, which I don't prefer full script by full script. So in other words, you mark one whole full script again, mark in pencil, mark two whole full script, mark three whole full script, and then by that time you should understand how to modify mark scheme, and then you could go whole script by whole script. The advantage of whole script by whole script for me is a mental thing. But you know, when you finish a script, you finish a script. You had 20 scripts, you finish a script, you had 19. You had 18, you finish a script, you had 18. Whereas when you're marking question by question, boy, you just have to keep going over all them 20 scripts, how much ever times. It's up to you. It's left up to the mark, right? All we ask for is that you be consistent, right? Consistent is the big you be consistent, right? General items, if a student's solution is completely different from the one proposed, but it looks to be correct, ask the lecturer if it's acceptable. It's fairly straightforward. I know some of these things straightforward, but in the past, markers didn't do this. So they would mark the whole thing and they mark it wrong. And then when the students come and say, well, say this is correct. And I found out, and it was indeed correct because they did a different method. For example, like in logic is English. When you translate from propositions to actual English and they write it just differently, they probably put the if and only in a different place. So they use the contrapositive instead of the statement itself, which is logically equivalent. It will still be correct. But because that's not what we have on the market scheme, they just went and they didn't mark correct. They didn't think. So what you don't want to do, you don't want to see the same error occurring in manuscripts and just assume all the students wrong. Every time you see a consistent error 5, 6 times, well, it'll start. Give the lecturer a call, send an email, hey, sir, I see in this, there's an error, we teach this in class, what's going on? And then find out early on, and then, well, mark the other scripts to suit, right? So that is what it is. If you're unsure about anything on marking, be sure to ask the lecturer, allow her to review your work. Maintain a good communication with lecturer is important, but to ask too many questions than to assume, to make the assumptions that lead to avoidable errors. Also, generally questions that you may have decreased after a few assignments. Yeah. So at first, when you start to mark for a certain lecture, you should have a lot of questions. And then as you proceed in the semester, you'll get accustomed to marking, the questions won't be as much, and then it'll be less. Post-it method. So what I do when I mark, and if I have questions for the lecturer, I have a little post-it and I write down the question on the post-it and I stick it at the top of the script. And that way I just jump to the next question and I keep going and I keep going. So when I do meet the lecturer and I have questions, I find the scripts easily with the post-its and I sort out my questions. So that way you don't stop. General items, asking the lecturer if she should be more lenient or more strict when marking, as a different lecturer may have different preferences. If a student gets the wrong answer because of a minor mistake, they should still be awarded marks for the steps that they did correctly, right? Sometimes it helps to give a half mark if you can't justify giving a whole mark. Check the lecturer if they allow half marks. So some lecturers don't, some does, right? It's just dependent on lecturer. Awarding 0, where reasonably possible, especially if you recognize that the student is making an honest attempt, avoid awarding 0. So if you see somebody write a whole page, right, and it's just wrong, see if you can find some way to give a half of something now, boy, because it's just psychological, right? And a half wouldn't really change the grade that they assign, right? But a 0 could hit them some mental torture, right? Like, say I write these 2 pages and I get 0, so it had nothing in this. Well, it's kind of wrong, you know, if it's out of 5, you get them a little half. Well, you know, this was really wrong, but you know, you just had it with proof and you have the box. So you're trying to get them something, you know, because there's a lot of psychology, right? And again, they're not going to change anything with respect to the marks, right? Much. Checking and entering marks after you have marked all the assignments. Check that the questions have been marked, and that is make sure that every page with a writing on it has some kind of marking, even the loose pages, which is cancel, scratch out. A simple line on the page will work. Yeah, so this is something important. It sometimes seems unnecessary to the marker, but it does serve a purpose. So after you finish mark, you just go through each script again and make sure all the questions are marked. Simple enough. In the past, we've had some scripts not being fully marked, and again, the same process goes. It goes to the students get it back. They say, so was this mark, or you realize a little part wasn't marked, then we have to send it back to the marker, and then they have to mark it and send it back to us, or we just mark it there, but it's dependent on how big. I mean, if it's like a lot that wasn't marked, we send it back to the marker. If it's one thing quick, we just mark it and go ahead. And then you have to change the mark to the mark sheet, blah, 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 the whole thing is again. So you don't want as much as possible to make errors that could be easily avoided. Right? So check that the number of scripts equate per envelope to that collected or recorded on the envelope. So same thing, right? Check that the students has not done more questions than required. If so, omit the lowest marks. I mentioned this already. Where applicable, students have choices. Also, if more than one attempt for a particular question is made, choose the highest mark to add. I mentioned this already. Ask the lecturer if you need them to report the marks on a spreadsheet. So sometimes, most likely, the markers will report the marks. Ask the lecturers what they want. Either they send you a spreadsheet or which is what I do. I send them an online spreadsheet so that it's entered automatically on my Google Drive. So there's no need to go back and forth. One spreadsheet works for the semester, but some markers, some lecturers like a physical Excel file and go back and forth with the email, because when you email it, you actually have static versions of it, right? Again, it depends on the lecturer. If you need to record the marks, ask the lecturer for a class list or create one yourself. So enter the marks into the spreadsheet, email the spreadsheet lecturer, retain the scripts. That's very straightforward. Go in the extra mile. So if you realize that many students, about 20% of the papers are making the same error or have a misconception, then you should document this for the lecturer. So again, it's fairly self-explanatory. Just have a little note, feedback on assignment 5. The students didn't know how to multiply properly, right? Also, what you want to do, avoid the temptation to write too much in a script, because that slows you down. So what you do, you find an error, you just circle the error. Unless if it's like a weird misconception that they have and you think that just circling wouldn't help them, you could write a little note. But if you realize 5, 6 people or a couple more making the same error, start to circle it and put the note for the lecturer. So the lecturer will address that in class, because generally it'll be easier. The lecturer may use this as a guide to review the specific topics with the class or repeat a similar question in the next assignment. Also, it will set you above the rest of the markers. Remember that the students who work and toiled and lost hours of sleep, right, to produce these assignments will be appreciated if they got the mark they deserve. So please have patience with marking. You would want the same materials were reversed. Anybody has any questions? Anybody online? Anybody has any questions online?
All good for now, I think.
All right, great. So
Wait, I just had one thing to ask about so you mentioned if it had like multiple parts and they only so let's say they have 3 questions to do and they say do two or three questions. They did all 3. So mark all 3 and only count the highest 2?
yeah, mark all 3, count the highest 2 and put a note for the lecture on the spreadsheet, right?
Okay.
Or the script or something, or post it, but let the lecturer know for sure.
Okay.
A good question. Anybody else? All right, so we going good with time. What I want to do now, I want to hand over to Vikash, Mr. Ramcharita. He will go through the online aspect if you need to mark online. And then I will come back and I have a little, I wouldn't say really quiz. We have a little exercise that you all would mark. And then after which we just correct and we go from there. So Vikash, over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'll just be going through with you how to mark scripts that are submitted online, because so what happened during COVID time, students had to submit their assignments, even their final exams and stuff online. So we had to be able to mark it online. And when we came back out from COVID, so depending on the lecturer for the course, some lecturers may allow their students or their class to submit their work online. In that case, you will have to mark a copy of the script online. So there's a couple ways you could do it. if you have access to a stylus or one of those drawing pads, or maybe you have a tablet that allows you to write on it, and you want to mark using like a stylus or on a tablet, that's perfectly fine, right? That will actually save you some time. However, if you don't have that, we may need to use tools built into, well, I'll show you two programs. The first one is Adobe, and the next one we can mark it from Microsoft Edge. Okay. Yeah, so slide just to show you, if you're not familiar with how to pull up these stuff in Adobe. So when you open up a PDF, most likely it's going to open into Adobe Reader. If not, you could also download it, it's free. And the tools that you need to use to mark is also free, so you don't need to pay for anything. Anyway, when you open it up on the side panel, you see these two buttons. So the one with the A in it is used if you want to include any type text. So if you're marking and you're not using a stylus or a touchpad to mark, you'll have to actually type in whatever it is you want to include on the script. The other important one is this highlighting tool. That will allow you to highlight on the student script where there might be some sort of mistake. You want to adjust the color of the type text to red, right? So just like when you're marking, you'll mark in a red ink. So when you're typing in anything, you'll want to do that in red. You can leave the highlighted color in yellow. That's fine. You could also use Microsoft Edge. I wish I had knew about this at the time when I had to mark that first batch when we first went online for COVID, because I looked at the tools in Microsoft Edge and it's actually a lot easier, and you don't have to download Adobe. So if you have, if you're now getting started and you want to choose one of these, definitely go with Microsoft Edge. It's a lot easier and nicer. So this is in Microsoft Edge now. So Microsoft Edge, you'll have different looking buttons. This first button here is again a highlighting tool. Then you have an eraser in case you want to erase anything. And you have something that will allow you to type text into it. So this is what it will look like in Edge. So let me go back one slide. If you want to open a PDF in Microsoft Edge, you just right click it, go down to open with, and go across to Microsoft Edge. Of course, I'm assuming that you're using a Windows computer. But I'm sure Apple might have something similar to it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I went back and found some of those assignments that I would have marked during the first semester we went online during COVID. So the semesters after that, I went and I got, because I realized that we're going to be online for a while. So I got one of those drawing pads. So I went back and found the assignments where I actually had to then type in stuff. So it's just a few examples. I just want to show you, because there's a main difference between not being able to physically write on a script and having to type in what you want to say. Okay, so we're going to go through just a few examples and see how to do this. Yeah, so these are just snapshots of assignments. This is linear algebra, so you don't need to understand anything here. The main thing to take away are the parts written in red. So when you're marking a script online, you want to put on the first page in capital letter. You can even put it larger than this. Make sure it's clear to read. So total and the mark out of whatever. And like Rajesh had said, when you're putting the marks, you want to try to put it along the margin. So either the left or the right. Now we'll see in a bit in the next screenshot that depending upon how the students scan their assignment, they may not leave you any space on the margin. So in that case, you're forced to put the mark on the main script, which is something you want to avoid. But yeah, so just put the mark on the margin. Yeah, so this example, this. Yeah, so this example shows how you could use this highlighting tool. So if you click on the highlighter, you could sort of highlight where they went wrong. Of course, if you're marking the actual script, you would circle this with your red ink pen, but you could circle it with a mouse, but that will take a lot longer than if you just click the highlighting tool and just highlight where they make that mistake. Again, you don't really need to know like what's going on in this, but you want to highlight the bits so that if someone, so like if your lecturer has to review a script, it makes it easier for them to identify the mistake the student make and how much marks the student got. So the first thing, if I see a script like this, I'll go to what was the highlighted part. So I see W1 is equal to this vector. And now I see some more stuff highlighted here. And W1, I see they put 0, 1, 1, 0. But what's highlighted up here is W1 equal 1, 0, 0, 0. So even without the mark scheme or without the solutions, I already know what the mistake was. They sub in the wrong vector for W1. And that will cause them obviously to get the wrong answer. This question was a long calculation. It's about 2 pages long. And they made this around the first page. So you see over here, the total marks. So I don't think they left enough room on the margins for me to put the marks. So so you could either choose to put the marks at the end of the question or maybe at the start of the question. And looking back at it, I would probably make this number a bit bigger. So you could even make this number, make the mark a little bit bigger. So I see that they got 10 out of 12, which means I took away 2 marks for that mistake. And I put over here, give ECF for error carry forward. And if you're giving an error carry forward, you don't ever want to put a correct symbol like a tick, right? Because it's not correct. So you want to put give error carry forward and then their mark. But you don't ever want to put a tick. Even if we'll see in a bit that I gave error carry forward for something where the answer was wrong, but I still give full marks. But you don't put a tick because it's not the correct answer. Okay, so pretty much only put a tick if the answer is actually correct. Right? Other than that, yeah.
How many marks to deduct for like something like this? Is it just 1 mark for the wrong substitution and 1 mark for not getting the correct answer?
Yeah, so that depends on the mark scheme. I couldn't find the
Okay.
mark scheme for this one. But usually if it's like a small arithmetic error, I would try to deduct the least amount of marks possible. So this is out of 12. So maybe the least, so what is the least unit of a mark in this case? Maybe 1 mark. But since they made the mistake, I want to say twice, that's why I took out 2 marks. But maybe you could say I was a bit harsh and I should have taken out 1 mark. That's fine as well. But it would depend on the size of the error, like how much is it changing the question. So this actually changed the question a little bit. I think that their calculation would have been a bit easier. But it's just something you need to look at the mark scheme, and over time you'll get an idea of how much you should take out. Another thing is you could try doing it this way. When I mark an assignment, I basically, and I pick up a student assignment script. Let's say that assignment is out of 10 marks. That student starts with 10 marks. And it is up to them to keep that 10 marks. So when I'm going through it, every mistake or incorrect calculation or incorrect solution, I deduct marks. So instead of thinking of it as awarding marks, you start with full marks and I'm deducting it. So that's one way you could sort of think of it. You get the same results. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I have the mark scheme for one of the, yeah, so this example. So I actually found the mark scheme for this one. So again, you don't need to know what's going on in question, just that the highlighted part, something went wrong there. And you see, again, they didn't leave me any room to the side to put the marks in this first one. So I had to put the mark over here. Again, looking back at it, I would probably make these numbers a bit bigger. So over here, this student did leave me enough room. So I put it on the margin. They both got 0 out of 2. And the reason for that is because, so when you're marking these questions, when you're marking an assignment, you're marking the student, the knowledge that the student is showing in the question, or the knowledge that the question is testing, right? You're not necessarily marking for the correct answer. Yes, if they know what they're doing, they'll get the correct answer. But you're marking to see how much they understand. So this question specifically asks to solve it using a specific way. You needed to use some matrix from the previous part. These two students, they didn't use that. They used another method, which would give you the correct answer if they did it correct, but they didn't. So even if they arrived at the correct answer, you see this one, they almost arrived at the correct answer. This 24 here was supposed to be at 12. But even if they arrived at the correct answer, you can't give that mark, right? Because they didn't do the method that was asked for, the method that was specifically asked for. Now, this is different from if the mark scheme or the question did not specify the method. And in the mark scheme that the lecturer gave you has one method, then that is not the only correct method because the question did not specify any method. So the student might do something different and then you need to mark them accordingly. Okay, so you can't give them 0 just because they didn't do what was in the marking scheme. The marking scheme or the sample solution is just that, a sample of the solution. There are many, many ways you could do it. But in this case, they ended up with 0. Yeah, so this one is basically showing that what Rajesh was saying, if they left out a part, you should probably write a note about it so the lecturer knows, hey, you've searched for that part. So I put missing number 5A, part 3, and what is their mark? 0 out of 3. Right, and again, looking back at it, I should have made this a bit bigger. Yeah, so this is another example of that. So total 44 out of 100. Why is their total so low? Oh, because they only attempted 3 questions. Okay, so you need to put in all those stuff, all those things as well. So when you are marking a script online, it takes a lot longer because you need to add all these things because you can't handwrite it. You have to type it in. So let's say a student make a mistake in a question. Ideally, what I will do, so you see in this one, I just highlighted and I just put like a small note. But bear in mind, if you highlight this and you write this note, if you come across this mistake again, you need to do that the same. So whatever you write here, you need to keep it as short and as informative as possible because you might need to type it multiple times depending upon how much time you see it. But I think Adobe has this thing where if you type something into that text box and if you go to type it again, it will come up as a recommended thing. So you could just click on it. Autofill, yeah. There's a difference? Yeah. Adobe Reader, Acrobat Reader, the one you could download. Okay.
Yeah, Acrobat has it. If you use a text box and you fill it in, it is pull back the past ones that you put in the box.
Yeah, so that will come in very handy if you're writing the same thing. Yeah, so again, on the left is the solution from 2 different students, and on the right is the mark scheme. So this is like what the marking scheme will look depending upon if the lecturer has the time to sit down and type it up. So in this question, again, you don't need to know what's going on in it, but if you just look at the highlighted part and I put here wrong characteristic equation, that means this part here is wrong. So Vinayaka, you are asking me how to know how much marks to take to deduct. So this is a good question. So they have the wrong characteristic equation, which means that they arrived, something here was wrong. And if you look at the marking scheme, you see 2 marks for correct equation. So they had the wrong equation. And if they had like a small arithmetic mistake, maybe a minus sign instead of a plus sign, then it could deduct only one of that mark. But I think they did a bit of nonsense and might have arrived at this one. So that's why I took out the 2 marks. But from here, you need this equation to do the second part. And this second part, if you have the wrong equation, you're going to get the wrong answer, obviously. But they did the correct calculation. So if they did the correct calculation, you see I put gave error carry forward, and I still highlighted to indicate that what they have here is still wrong. So you don't put a tick, right? Because yes, it will be correct based on their wrong equation, but it's not the correct answer. So don't put a tick, just circle it or highlight it in this case and put gave error carry forward. And if you look at these 2 scripts, this is the same question for 2 different people. Notice how it's marked the same. So one of the most important thing when you're marking is to be as consistent as possible. So you see, same thing highlight, same thing indicated, most importantly, the same mark they got. Okay, so you need to be as consistent as possible.
What about the case where, let's say someone is copying back a question and copy a wrong sign or something? And then that one sign throws off whatever the question's supposed to be. What
So 1 minus sign off.
Yeah, like
Okay, we'll get to that one. I think that is the slide after this one. So this one, this is so going back to what Rajesh said, they'll write, you might feel bad when they write a lot of things and you have to put 0. But in this case, if you actually take the time to sit down and read through this stuff, it was complete nonsense. So this showed me that the student didn't understand anything, right? So in this case, I had to put 0, because if you put 1 here, then where, and the lecturer asks you, okay, where are they getting that 1 mark from? That means there's at least 1 correct statement here. And if you take the time to read it through, there's no correct statement here. So sometimes, again, you want to always avoid putting 0 for a question. But sometimes it is not, you really need to put 0 for it, right? So yeah, so don't feel like you can never put 0 for anything. There will be cases where there's nothing correct in it and you cannot justify a mark at all. Okay, so sometimes you really need to put 0. So this is what you're asking about, a minus sign. All right, so again, a very long calculation question. Then they make a minus sign error. So you highlight it to indicate the error. And how much mark did they lose? Just 1. Okay, and they only lose 1 mark here because the total mark was out of 12. If this question was, let's say, out of 3 marks or 4 marks, I might have just given full marks for it, even though it's the wrong answer, because look, you make it all the way to the end and then you have 1 little mistake.
stumble at the finish line. Yeah.
Yeah, so you could use your discretion like that. And again, minus sign here, so another minus sign error. So they lost a mark. Right, so if it's like simple arithmetic mistake, no, and this mistake they made at the beginning. So you just follow through what they did, make sure they have the right idea. Yes, they will arrive at the wrong answer. So you circle the part of the answer that's wrong. You don't put a tick because this is not correct. And then you deduct a marks if you think that
But you still mark the work in a sense. Once it
Yeah.
have the valid method.
Yeah, exactly. So you still, if they make some small arithmetic mistake or any sort of arithmetic mistake actually throughout their working, you're still supposed to follow through and see what they did. Right? You can't just stop there and be like, okay, they do something wrong on the second line, so 0. Right? It's still supposed to go through. That's why it's actually the students that know their work the best. Those scripts you will spend the least amount of time marking. Those scripts you will fly through because they have everything correct. Nothing to check really. But is the ones that don't know what they're doing, you'll spend 5-10 minutes going through one question. Yeah, so in this case, the student did everything correct. And this last number that I highlight here, not supposed to be a 0. I think it's supposed to be a 6. Yeah, depending on the marks here. So it's supposed to be 1/6 by 3, which is a half. So they have 12 outside here. So it was supposed to be a 6 and they put a 0. So how much marks I took out? I gave them full marks, right? Because they did everything correct. They just wrote a 0 instead of a 6. No need to take out a mark.
But no tick, because technically the answer.
Exactly. No tick because this isn't correct.
Just,
Yeah.
just, if I may just add.
Yeah.
Depending on the course you're marking for. Yeah, when we focus on basic things like arithmetic and correct geometry and correct things like that, but when you go to a year 3 or year 2 course, and that is a minor part of the question, as we see here, that's just simple addition, right? We could foresee those things because this is really what Kelly haven't done there, right? They did everything properly, they found the eigenvectors, they found the induces, so that is the skill you're testing in this higher level course, not the basic skill which we assume that you would have known. So that is a little justification about why we still give full marks.
Yeah. You all got that?
Yeah, understand.
All right, good. Okay, well, that's it for this presentation. So any questions? Questions, Shaman? No?
Yeah, so what I was, let me just jump back one because instead of giving individuals the mark, I will just bring up my PDF and I'll just go through the PDF so you all see what's going on. So the idea was to give a PDF with these questions. I'll just get the solution for time. So it's actually a very small PDF. So I made up an exam for you all. So this was the front page. But let's just go through and see how it was. So this was my made up question 1A. So it's only on the top right hand corner because I did 4 pages per sheet, right? So I have a physical copy here. I have a physical copy. So this here you would put well 3 plus 2 obviously that's 5. So you put a tick and you put the marks here. This is 4. The start of the paper says that each part of the question is out of 4 marks, right? So we know everything and you have, well, 3 minutes, right? Answer each question. Each question has A, B, and C and each part is 4. So we come down here. We see 3 plus 2, that's 5, we put a tick and we put the mark here on the right hand side because that's the outer margin, right? We don't put the mark in the middle here. Part B, 6 minus 1, 4, that obviously that's wrong. We just gave her 2 marks just to say they had other stuff here, right? But I mean, if it was clearly that they get 0, right? 19 minus 3, 16, we put 4, and then we total here now. So question 1 has A, B, and C. So circle mark, circle mark, circle mark, because those are sub marks. But when you add them up, 4 plus 2 plus 4 is 10, and you put double lines. So this represents the total for question 1. Because on this page, the only question is question 1, there was no need to write question 1 at the bottom here. But you could have written question 1 at the bottom. So you know that is the total for question 1. Coming here now, question 2, straightforward. 4 by 2, 8, you put the 4 marks here. 9 minus 1, 8, you put the 4 marks here. They didn't do part C, or they did this for part C. We gave them X. We put 0 here. I should have circled this 0. And then we add 4 and 4, 8. So they got 8 for question 2. Going down now, we look at question 3. Question 3 part A, we have 10 divided by 5 is 2, which is 4. We good. They don't have B, so we put a question mark, and you could put the empty set or you could put 0. This is 0. So on this page, if you realize, okay, this is question 3. So what you do, you go to the next page, expecting question 3 to continue, but it didn't continue. They had 4. So we see there's a discontinuity here. This is question 3. And then it jumps to question 4. And then question 3 finishes off here. So this is where we need to carry forward marks. So this is 4 marks. The total for this question to be carried forward is 4. So we put 4 and we put the arrow. What I would do here, which I didn't do, I would put question 3. So we know which question we're carrying it forward to. We come here now. Let's finish question 3. So this is my question 3 here. I mark my question 3. We get 4. This is the 4 marks that I brought forward. So they get 4 plus 4 is 8. And I have 8 marks here and I put 8 marks total question 3. So I know that there's no other part for question 3 that's going to come at all. So now we jump to question 4. So this is question 4. They got 4. Again, question 4 and then question 3. So we need to carry this 4 forward. So we put the square box and then we go to 4. 4 continues here. We bring the 4 forward, right? Yeah, this is an error here. Sorry. This arrow, you also in this
Supposed to be on the next side. Yeah.
Yeah. So you also this arrow here is on this side. So it means that, okay, we brought it to here. And then this arrow is on the right hand side, which means we're moving this 4. But the 4 should have moved to here, meaning that this arrow should have been on the left hand side. So I do apologize for that. So then we have 4 plus 2 is 6, and they got total of 6 for question 4. And that's it. Anybody has any questions there? Online, anybody has any questions?
No, this just cleared up what my main question would have been, was how to notate the carry forward in marks. But yeah, it cleared it up.
Okay, great. Okay, lovely. I just want to briefly touch on Math Fair. Are you all aware about Math Fair? So Math Fair is an event that we host every year in the department. It's going to be either February or March. And it's the biggest event that Math department hosts. And we would definitely need your assistance on that day and possibly the day before and the weeks coming up. So I'm just giving you all a heads up. Coming down closer to it, we would give some more information. This year, I believe Dr. Daga is the coordinator for it. He has been the coordinator for a couple of years. So I'm just giving you all a heads up as to look out for it. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's very, very enjoyable. Last year we had over 3,000 students, and I think the year before we had over 2,000 students. So it's really good and gaining popularity, and it does have positive effects to the department. Students like it. And I've asked my class if they came here because of Math Fair, and they're like, yeah, a couple of them. So which is really, really good. And Math is something we always want to work on and try to get students to be more comfortable with it, I should say. Oh, and it should be, you all should be able to get compensated for it as well, right? So you could claim the hours, which is great. All right, so that is my share there. Let me just pass it to Mr. Ramcharter again, who would just say a few words on Math Help Center, and then we will end off the recording there. All right, so Mr. Ramcharter.
Okay, Math Help Center. So, well, I think we all know what the Math Help Center where it's located and what it's about. So just like a couple guidelines about it. So when you enter the Help Center, there'll be 2 registers, usually on one of the tables. One of them is a sign-in sheet. So that's for the tutors to sign. So you just need to sign the time that you reach for your session, and sign will put the time that you're leaving. The next one is for you to log the student information, and that's very important. So usually when the student come in and you're about to help them, so you could either choose to take down their information while they're getting out their books or pulling up whatever question sheet they have on their computer. You could fill out the information then, or if you want to, you could fill it out at the end of the session. You just need to remember to fill it out. The tutors, which is us, we're the ones that should be filling that out. Okay, so don't let these students fill it out because they usually make a mess out of it. So we're the ones that should be filling out both of those forms. Yeah, so when a student enter, after you greet them, you'll just ask them what course they need help in. So sometimes they're going to give you a course code that is not METH or STAT or something, what, so like, let's say they say econ, something like 1001 or something like that. So if you hear a course code that isn't math related, don't just turn them away because of that. Most likely in many of those other courses and other faculties and departments, there are a bit of mathematics they need to know. And most of the time it's like on the level of like Form 6 math. So even though it's a course you most likely never did, you'll be more than able to go through the maths with them. So if they give you a course code you're not familiar with, just ask them what topic. And then they'll probably say something like dividing polynomials, right? So that's something you can help with. So when you're dealing with a student now, if they just want you to go through with them some topic they don't understand, or maybe something in the course notes they don't understand, so that's fine. When they now want you to go through like certain questions they have, most of them will come in some problem sheet or some question sheet and show you some questions that is giving them problems and they want to know if you could go through with them. So the first thing you need to find out is do a bit of due diligence on your part and ask them if that is an assignment. Okay, if they say no, this is an assignment, it's just like a past paper or maybe a practice sheet question, then okay, that's great. If they say yeah, it's an assignment, then of course the next follow-up question will be, when is the assignment due? If the assignment due date has already passed, most of those assignments even have the due dates written on it, then it's okay to go ahead and explain to them. Maybe if the due date is like within plus or minus like 2 or 3 days of when they are there, maybe don't do that same problem, because most of the time the lecturer might still give like a some extension, so we don't know for sure. But if it's like assignment and you see the due date was like 2 weeks ago or a month ago, then yeah, you could go through that with them. If they say yeah, it's an assignment and it's still due, then you don't want, again, you don't want to turn them away. So you would say, okay, well, I can't help you with this exact question, but let's try a similar question to it. So in that case, try to come up with something similar to it. If you can't, if it's a really technical question and you can't quite think of something similar with it to try with them, what you could do is instead go over the theory behind what they will need to solve that question. And maybe in them going over the theory, then they'll be able to better understand what they need to solve the question.
Or even you could ask them if they have a question in the notes and go back over.
Yeah, so also a good idea is to ask them to look at their course notes, because most of the time, everything they need to solve the assignment questions will be in their notes. So it's always a good idea for them, for the students to work with their course notes, so that helps us out a lot. Of course, it's impossible for us to know what is an assignment question throughout all the different faculties and departments. If a student really wants to get us to solve the assignment question, of course, all they have to do is write that down in their notebook and bring it to us. Like if it's a past paper question, and we most likely, well, we won't know, so we'll go through it with them. So there's really nothing like we can do about that, because we don't know all the assignments that's going on. If you suspect that the question you're being given is an assignment question, then remember, you do not have to answer, you do not have to solve everything that the student gives you. Okay, you could solve some. For some reason, the student brings you some question, and for some reason you have a feeling that this is an assignment question, but they told you it's not. Then you don't have to solve it. You could solve something similar to it. Okay, so, and once you do your due diligence at the start, which is to just ask them if it's an assignment, then that's your part done. Okay. What else? Yeah, so the last thing is sometimes there will be the case where a student comes in for help with a topic and it's really not something you're familiar with, or maybe you just never did the course, or maybe you can't remember anything on the topic, so you can't help them. then what you could do, again, you never really want to turn them away. You could try to defer them. Maybe there's another tutor at the help center who did that course or who knows that topic really well, then they could go by that tutor. If that tutor is currently seeing someone, what you could do is you could just ask them to, if they don't mind waiting for that tutor to finish, or they could come back at a later time. Or let's say it's a really obscure topic and no one at the help center during that time knows about it. The last thing you could probably do is have a look at the people on the roster for the rest of the week, maybe the following week. And if there's someone there who you think may know that topic, then you could ask the student if they could come during that time and you tell them the time. Don't tell them who it is. And the students, you should never show them that roster. So the Math Help Center roster, that's only for our eyes. Okay, and don't let them take a picture of it or anything. You just tell them, okay, there will, I think there's a tutor at this day and time that may be able to better help you with it. So if you want to, you could come for that. If not, then we will have to recommend that they reach out to the lecturer for whatever course that is.
Why do you want them?
Why what?
Why we don't want them to know the hours?
Oh yeah, so the main reason, well, I think the reason why we don't want them to know the roster is because then they're just going to keep coming by, so if they find out or if they know that a specific tutor is helping them out really well and stuff, then they're probably just going to want to come for that only specific tutor. But ideally, they should be coming at any time, and then a lot of people are just going to come during the same time.
The other reason as well in the past we had put this very, the word my English correctly, students could get attached to certain tutors and it becomes more than
I see.
just helping it, or they try to do something more than just helping. So that's just something to be mindful for. I think you all know where I'm coming from. So we don't want anybody to feel unsafe. Right?
Yeah, just don't show them the roster.
Yeah.
Yeah, moral of the story, they shouldn't see that or they shouldn't take a picture of it. Okay, any questions? Come in. No question? Rajesh, anything else to add?
Are you talking about online?
Online help center?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, also there is online help center. So normally there's a computer in the math seminar room, sorry, the help center room. And we would require somebody to be on that PC in the online version of the help center. That is actually a course. Dr. Sanka knows a bit more, and I know she has documentation, so I'm guessing it will be forthcoming. But essentially, we need to have a physical presence, which are the individuals in the room, and we need to have an online presence. So sometimes, depending on your online roster, again, Dr. Sanka would say more about this. You would either come into the Math Help Center room and do the online there, sitting down by the PC, or you could do it at your desk or even home if you know you're going to be online only. Right? I think that's about it. Anybody has any closing questions, any comments? It's okay. All right. Well, on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank everybody for coming to the meeting. Especially thanks to, what's his name? Shamwin. Especially thanks to Shamwin for being here physically. Otherwise, I would have just been presenting online. This is being recorded, so the goal is to obviously circulate it. We'll share it with you all, I assume, and then we'll have it for all the other years to come, so that it's something that hopefully we don't have to repeat, because this is fairly standard stuff that we've mentioned here, so it wouldn't have to be modified too much. All right, so with that, I would like to thank you all again. Enjoy the rest of the evening and happy marking. Take care. Thanks again.
Enjoy this.